was drafted in Johnson County in January of '69. My brother and I were the 2 draftees for that county for January '69. I served at Fort Lewis, Washington for basic, went to Fort Ord, California for infantry training, and then went to Vietnam in June of '69. I was 11 Bravo infantry with a mechanized unit of the 4th Division. We pulled bridge security and road security from Pleiku to Kontum, which entailed bridge security at night. In the morning, we swept all the roads with minesweepers, and then during the day, we pulled out and guarded the road so convoys could go from Pleiku to Kontum.
Okay. I'm going to have you look at him.
Not you.
And I know you're in the Army, but if you go ahead and like to state that so we can get that on camera. So.
I was in the Army, and like I said, drafted with my brother in January of '69.
So this is actually the first that I've heard that the brothers were drafted. Could you shed a little bit of light on that? Maybe what that might have been like, having being drafted with your brother?
It was great because the basic and stuff where you're always harassed. Why they kind of had a good time with us because Anderson brothers, you know, and stuff. But it was reassuring, you know, to have a brother there and not, at least have somebody that you knew there and stuff, because there was other people from Wyoming that went to basic. But then he went to Fort Huachuca for Army security training, and later came over to Vietnam. I could have left, but I decided, because I had been called back in to be a company clerk, to stay. So we spent 2 tours there, or I mean a tour there, and December of '69 we got together in Saigon for Christmas.
That's really amazing.
Yeah,
that's really awesome.
Both of us. So that was kind of neat too. My mom was a little nervous, I think, probably. And
oh, I could understand that. I could definitely understand that, having her babies over there.
Yeah, her little baby boys.
Yeah. So we're gonna be doing vignettes, you know, put together.
Oh, okay. So it isn't all my mistakes will be in there.
Something like that.
Yeah.
But if you want to share like 1 or 2 stories that to you that I would say maybe your most memorable, and you know, if you don't want to share them, that's perfectly fine. You know.
I guess the most memorable thing for me was growing up in KC, I never even knew about drugs. And when I got to Vietnam, drugs were everywhere. And I was processed in, and at the mess hall, this guy was sitting there with complete scars on his face over here. And I said, what in the world happened to him? And they said, that's old Red. He's fine out in the field. But when he comes back into base camp for R&R, he gets to using drugs and liquor or alcohol. And I said, oh my gosh, you know. So a few months later, I saw old Red, and they brought him, as when I was coming to clerk, they brought him, I was night clerk, and they brought him in and said, we have one of your guys out here. And I said, who is it? And I went out, and they said, we don't know. So I went out and I saw Red, and I said, hey Red, you better go back to the barracks and sleep this off. Next day he was dead in a ditch behind the barracks. So drugs were a real surprise to me, because KC, we didn't have drugs much at all.
Yeah, that's definitely a culture shock, that's for sure.
One of the base camp tours that we did, we used to have to do base camp tours, all us clerks and post office guys and those kind of things. And we went on a tour, and this lieutenant took us out and was going fine, but then he went the wrong direction. And one of the guys hit a beehive with his M60, and the bees are about that big in Vietnam, and they swarmed everybody. We had to medevac 10 to 15 people out of there.
Really?
One of the sergeants, Medlin, it was his name, was completely, his eyes were well shut. I opened up a smoke grenade and threw some water and never got stung, but that was really, and people were throwing radios, throwing their rifles, because they weren't anything to mess with in those days, you know.
Yeah, I can bet.
What else? I guess one of the frustrating things was when we were in the field, or I was in the field, all our APCs and tanks pulled in at the bridges at night. And then we would fire into the jungle or whatever, to have some cover. But when we had our APCs, they were old. And the Vietnamese drove APCs that were brand new, and we would go out, jump ours in the morning, go out and then pull, after we swept, we'd pull out, shut it off. We didn't have any battery. So then the guy at the end had good battery, so he'd jump everybody back, coming back to the bridges. So that was one frustrating thing, because and as soon as the South Vietnamese were attacked, just like the boys in Iraq, they leave them. They don't stay with their stuff,
No.
you know. So that was one frustrating thing.
Yeah, I could definitely see that being pretty frustrating. Just, you know, like you're saying, if you guys don't have that much of good equipment, but you see these guys, and the first sign of trouble, you know, it's the hairy situation. They abandon all their good equipment, but
They're vamoosing it.
yeah, I could definitely see that.
The lucky thing was that the Vietnamese or the NVA or the Viet Cong did not know that we were dead in the water. So they didn't attack at much at all, but they sure could have done a little bit of action on us.
Yeah.
What else? I can't think of. Going down to see my brother during Christmas was really a unique situation. We had a good time. I think I got 4 days down there and stuff. So
That's really
that was one of the nicest times. I went to R&R in Bangkok, and of course that's always nice too. But I wasn't married or anything. Don't put that stuff on it. Okay. What else can I tell you guys?
I don't know. I think we got some pretty good stuff.
I had a quick question. You were born and raised KC? Did you
I was born in
see the war?
Sheridan,
Okay.
and my folks moved around Sheridan. My mom started teaching. Then she taught at the country schools out there that no longer exist, Billy Creek and stuff, and Mayoworth. Then we moved to KC in '57, and lived there till '66, till we moved into here to Casper.
How did they let you guys know that you were drafted at that time?
Letter. I had
Come the same day?
Yeah, I said, "Hey Jimmy, here, my brother." He's one of the guys that are doing all this too. But I said, "Hey Jimmy, here's your draft notice, or there's a letter from the VA." And he said, "What? Why didn't you get one?" I knew I had it, you know. "I don't know." I said, I don't know. And he opened it up, and it says, you are report to the Occidental Hotel, and then you'll go to Denver for your physical and stuff. So I guess we had our physicals already. But then we were going to fly from Denver to Fort Lewis together with about 10 to 15 other guys. But we were the only 2 people on the bus from Occidental to go to Denver. So, and mom and her teacher friend saw us off, and you know, I was scared to death before I went over there. But when I got there, I could see there was some bad action prior to me getting over there and stuff. But we were kind of pulling back. So the next move eventually was to move to An-Kay. Well, we moved to An-Kay for 2 to 3 weeks. The VC had blown up every bridge on the roads because the Vietnamese didn't guard them. So then guess what? We had to move back to Pleiku. Pleiku is a big, big base.
Yeah.
One of the things that impressed me was a big old light. It was like, I don't know, it's nothing right here, but out there, we were kind of in the flatlands, and up on that hill, there was a big hill in the middle of the whole complex. That light would show for miles. So there was guard towers around the whole perimeter, and that light would show completely out in the town of Pleiku, out in the jungle. So, you know, it was really difficult for those guys to penetrate. They did.
Oh, yeah.
In An-Kay, they did one night. They blew up 20-some helicopters when I was a night clerk, and you never caught one of them. You know, they got back out. Those helicopters were in individual sandbag units where they were completely there, but 24 times what? How many millions of dollars?
Right.
But not one. We caught one. I guess they caught one on a base camp patrol the next day, but that was all. So those boys were very good at getting where they wanted to be without you noticing them and stuff,
yeah.
you know.
Yeah, I don't know. I would say that's one thing that I hear a lot too. You know, I have a lot of friends that served in Vietnam, and so I talk to them, and you know, you hear the stories and you see the movies, and you know, you hear people talk, and they make them sound like they're not smart people, but
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
they're really smart, and that's the
Yeah.
same thing that people were saying in Afghanistan too. Like, oh, they're not smart people, but this is what these people do. You know, that's what they do, and so if they want to find a way, they're gonna make it happen. So,
They were fighting for their country, and you know, they beat the hell out of the French all the time and stuff. And I guess, you know, some of these guys like Dave Weinrich and some of those tunnel rats, you see those probably special, but Dave owns Weinrich's Meat and Locker. I think he was a tunnel rat, which I'm glad I didn't pull that duty, because you went down there with a 45 and you were face to face with something. Buddy, they had hospitals, they had everything down there in those tunnels. And B-52 strikes, I used to listen to them when I was out in the field guarding those bridges at night, because we had bridge security or bridge guard 6 o'clock in the afternoon till morning. That was a joke, because I would pull the 6 o'clock and I'd wake up Sully. Hey Sully, wake up, you're on guard duty. Guess what? He wouldn't wake up, number one, or number two, he'd fall asleep on the
you
APC.
wake up,
Yeah, I'm awake. Yeah, back to sleep. But there was, you know, it was a frustrating war, because you couldn't really. We had a guy shot off an APC one time and killed him, and into a mountain yard village. Couldn't fire back because there was a no-fire zone till he got cleared. So, you know, those are things that are frustrating. You can't just, like in World War II, which was terrible, but they went through France, they went through so-and-so and into Germany. And they didn't stop, and they didn't, no fire zone, my God.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of lives. In fact, 2 of the KC kids are up on that board that I went to high school with and stuff. So.
Really?
And KC, you know, I hate to tell you, but for a town of 270 people, we had a lot of kids drafted. Because Upper Johnson County, Buffalo, their parents were on this board, draft board, and guess what? Those boys got to stay home a little bit more. Yeah, we had quite a few. It's amazing. I don't know how many. I know quite a few are going to attend, but I know a couple of friends that I have back in Iowa and stuff. I don't think he's going to make it. So.
Have you guys, I guess, have any of you guys from KC met up and did like a reunion or something like that?
No, we haven't, and a lot of the guys didn't know about it until I started fundraising for this thing, you know, through the businesses here. And I saw a couple of them in town and told them, hey, you know, what's going on. And one of them did. He went to the VFW, Rome Taylor out of KC, and said he had some information on it. But I was glad I was be able to give him. We've never had, but we'd have about 15 to 20 people, I'll bet you. Out of a town of 270.
Yeah, and that's big. And, you know, maybe a lot of people don't realize how big KC, Wyoming
Yeah,
really is. And,
yeah.
But 15 out of KC, that's a good chunk. You know, that's a really good chunk.
Gosh, there's 2 brothers there, too, Robin and Rome Taylor. But they weren't over there at the same time. That guy that's not going to make it from Iowa, Don Dawson, was a pilot for the 101st, I think.
Really?
Jack Fauber's another one that was a senior when I was a junior. He was a radio person close to somewhere north of Saigon, I think, for one of the infantry units and stuff. Yeah, there was a lot of guys. Well, the Harrison boy got killed, the Taylor boy got killed. So I've just named about 8 or 9 already, right?
Yeah.
And I can't think of, if I could, off the top of my head, I could think of some more, you know, if I really got serious and thought about it. But for a small town, we got to share our duty.
Yeah, that's for sure.
You ever look at the Occidental the same way, the hotel?
I like it. I still really do like it. You know, it's such a neat place and stuff. But I went up there. I was up there the other day with my daughter and showed her where that Shirley Fellers was the head of the board. She says to Jimmy, you know, something to Jimmy, and she knew she says, "Where's your brother?" You know, I knew what she had in mind. Well, I was sitting over there in the corner, you know, and he's right there. He said. But what happened was I quit school to work construction. Well, then my draft, you know, I didn't have a exemption or whatever they used to call it. I can't think of, but you were exempt as long as you were in school and stuff. But when you quit school, you were fair
open.
game, yeah.
Wow.
And, you know, it wasn't, what was it, a year or two later, they started that lottery. Maybe they started while I was over there, but...
Yeah, I heard about that.
you were lucky if you had 3 something. You were darn sad if you had 1 through 40 or 50, you know. But it was a good experience for me. I was tired of school. I was, you know, nervous as heck going over. But when I came back, I've got a lot of benefits from the VA and stuff that medicine for Ancient Orange, free medical. I mean, I have been using them. I don't have a lot of medical issues, you know, but they've been really good to me after I got back and stuff too. And a VA housing. That's how I bought my first house, was through a VA situation. So it hasn't been all negative.
Right.
I can't think of anything to tell you guys. What that most exciting thing was to go down and see him at Tonsonute for 4 days. That was kind of a relief. That's where your presidents and your Bob Hopes and guys like that come to entertain and see how the war's going on. And I had it pretty safe up in Pleiku because that was a pretty safe base camp. But we were fortunate. My dental friend that's going to speak at the breakout on Saturday said, well, you still could have got hurt or anything, you know. So
yeah.
But
and again, you know, no matter what job you had or where you might have been, it's a stressful situation, and a lot of people don't take that into account.
Yeah.
You know, they think, oh, you weren't doing this or you weren't doing that, but still, you know, you're away from your family. You know, you're in a different country. They don't speak English. You know, you know,
number
it's a
one.
different culture.
You're number one. They always say you're number one, GI.
So yeah, and you know, it's a stressful situation no matter what job you did, and so I think you have a really interesting story. I really
Good.
do.
Did your brother come home at the same time?
No, he came home in August of 70, because he came over in August of 69, and then I could have left in August, but I knew they'd send me to Korea in 11 Bravo, which I thought, God dang, that's not improving much here.
Right.
When I've got this clerk job, and I'm up there at the DMZ in the cold weather and stuff, you know. So, and I really had it good. I mean, as far as I enjoyed what I was doing, and I really was good to the guys in the field too, because I knew them. So they'd come. What they did on some of those things, a guy takes an R&R, then he has to report back to me in the base camp. Well, then I show him being still 3 to 4 days in base camp where he can still relax more and stuff, you know. And
That's really cool.
yeah, I took care of a lot of those guys because I knew how it was out in the field and stuff. And if they could 3 or 4, and my captain and none of those guys ever said, well, Rusty, you can't do that. You need to get those guys back out there in the field as soon as possible. But a lot of the guys, and if some guy was a dick, I didn't do it, but
right,
you know,
Send them back.
yeah, send them back right as soon as they report.